He was all scars and silenced rage simmering in his golden eyes, a growl always humming. Low in his throat, the German shepherd, huge and coiled like a live wire, hugged. The darkest corner of the shelter kennel, 3 owners, 3 violent episodes. 3 returns. The staff didn't call him Titan, not really behind closed doors, they called him. "We've done all we can," murmured Mary Jenkins, her worn fingers wrapped around Ethan Mallister's arm. Behind the metal door, Ethan didn't hesitate. He moved forward anyway. The dog's eyes locked with his full of fury, but also something else, something that stopped Ethan cold. It wasn't recognition of face. It was a reflection of pain. "I'll take him," Ethan said softly. Mary blanched. "That dog'll rip your throat out." But what came next would shake everything Clearwater. Arizona was the kind of dusty backroad town where the wind whispered secrets and folks still waved at strangers. Sandwiched between rust-colored mesas and parched plains, it had a single blinking traffic light, 3 churches, and enough gossip to choke a cactus. Summer had dropped down like a hammer, the pavement boiling by noon. Ethan Mallister's house stood off a gravel road, its sun-faded paint and dry yard hinting at better times. At 45, Ethan wore the military in his bones, in the way he scanned doorways before entering, and how he stood ramrod straight even when still. It had been 3 years since his discharge. 3 years since cancer stole Sarah. 3 years since the memories started chasing him in his sleep. Folks around town didn't know much, just that the quiet man with haunted eyes liked his coffee black and his mornings silent. What they couldn't know was that Ethan had been Elite Army Rangers, canine handler, worked side by side with war dogs, in places no one should have had to walk. They didn't know a blast had shredded his unitand, buried metal in his leg, that he'd lost 2 partners that day one man. Animal shelter longer than some folks had been alive. Her hair always wound tight in a bun, glasses dangling like jewelry from a chain around her neck. Been saving strays since disco was a thing, she liked to joke. She'd seen cruelty in every shape and shade. But Titan was different. He gave even her steady hands pause. "That dog ain't right," she'd told Deputy Frank Coleman. Frank, gray and gruff, and about as flexible as a brick wall, just nodded. "Some creatures ain't fixable, Mary. Not all of 'em make it." Then there was Dr. Sarah Mitchell, the town vet. She'd examined Titan after his 3rd return. Those wounds weren't accidents, she noted in her file. He's been tortured, but even she wouldn't step near the dog without backup. "Rehab, maybe," she'd said carefully, "but don't count on it." Nobody in town imagined what would unfold when Ethan Mallister pulled into that shelter on a scorching Tuesday. He wasn't there for a dog, just needed fencing supplies. But when he drove past the cinderblock building with its sun-bleached Clearwater Animal Shelter sign, that gut feeling, the one that had kept him alive more than once in war. Inside, the shelter fought a losing battle against the heat. A little bell jingled as Ethan stepped through. The air smelled of bleach and desperation. He paused, blinking under buzzing lights. "1 sec," a voice called from the back. Ethan stood, hands jammed in his jeans. He wasn't looking for company, maybe just something to help fill the space Sarah left behind. Photos lined the walls, grinning families, rescued pets, feel-good endings. One picture held him, a little girl, squeezing a retriever, both beaming. "Can I help you?" Mary appeared, drying her hands. Recognition lit her face. Mr. Mallister, right? Recognition always made him uneasy. In towns like this, being a quiet widowed vet made you stick out. "Well, we've got lots of faces to meet, got a box of kittens that'll melt your heart," Mary said, pointing toward a side door. "Or, if you're more of a dog man," a crash thundered from the back, cutting her off. Shouts followed. A growl so low and raw, it gave Ethan goosebumps. He tensed instinctively. "Everything all right?" he asked. Mary's smile turned tight. "One of our ... difficult cases." Another crash, louder. "Sounds like they could use help," Ethan said, already heading toward the noise. "Wait, please, don't." But he'd already pushed through into the kennels. 2 teenage volunteers backed away from the final cage. One clutched a pole, the other cradled a bleeding wrist. Ethan ignored Mary's calls behind him. He stepped closer. The dog, massive, scarred, fire-eyed, was magnificent, even now. Muscles taut, chest rumbling with warning. One ear gone, muzzle crisscrossed in pink welts. "Titan," Mary said behind him. "Step back. He's lethal." But Ethan wasn't seeing Titan. He was back in the desert. Another dog, another war, another ghost they wanted put down. Everyone but him. How long's he been here? Ethan asked, never taking his eyes off the dog. "Too long," Mary said softly. 3 times returned. Last one needed 20 stitches. He's marked for Friday. That meant 3 days. 3 days left, but beneath it, Ethan saw something, not hate, expectation. He expected hurt. "What happened before?" Ethan asked. Mary shook her head. "Picked up near the highway. Starving. Covered in those scars already. Dr. Mitchell thinks some are from fights. Some," she trailed off, "were done on purpose." Ethan finished. He didn't speak for minutes, just sat, watched. The others stayed back. Even Mary kept her distance. Titan didn't stop growling, but his movements slowed. Their eyes met through chain link. Ethan saw not a threat, a mirror. "I'll take him," he said. Silence, long and full. "Mr. Mallister," Mary finally whispered, "this isn't a fixer-upper. That dog's a tickin' bomb." "So was I once," Ethan replied, rising. "Still am some days." Mary blinked, saw him. Really saw him. "You can't patch this one up with treats and love." "I'm not giving him love," Ethan said. "I'm giving him understanding." Mary exhaled, pulled off her glasses. "I can't endorse this." 3 days, Ethan said. "You were putting him down anyway. Let me try." Paperwork took longer than the choice. Mary brought out forms like armor, waivers, disclaimers, signatures. "I need every T crossed." "For liability," she muttered. Ethan's hand cramped from writing, but he understood this wasn't a rescue. It was a risk. The final form was plain. Adoption of aggressive animal, shelter not liable for injury or death. "You're either the gutsiest man I've met or the dumbest," Mary said at last. Still, not sure which, getting Titan into the truck was a battle in itself. He wouldn't budge. Growled at every approach. Even the catch pole was useless. "Let me try," Ethan said. He asked for space, ignored all protocol. Then, God help him, he stepped into the kennel. Jesus, Mary, the shelter director, gasped. Inside, Ethan stayed still. Titan retreated, hackles raised. The floor trembled with his growl. Neither moved. 1 second, 10, a minute. Sweat rolled down Ethan's face. Not fear, focus. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said evenly. "Not even gonna look at you." He sat, slow, small, "but we're leaving here together." 5 minutes crawled by. The growl softened. Confused pants. Ethan pulled out an old leather lettuce from service. Not shelter issue, soft, familiar. "Your call," he said, setting it down. Through the observation window, Mary watched eyes. Wide Titan didn't approach. But when Ethan rose and headed for the gate, Titan followed. Not close, but enough. The drive was tense. Titan trembled in the cab corner. The Missoula required conditions seemed more humiliating than helpful. Ethan kept things slow, quiet. When his land came into view, 3 fenced acres and a worn ranch house, he hoped it would be enough. "Home," he whispered. Getting the dog inside was another puzzle. Ethan had prepped doors open, clear path to a spare room. No crate, just a bed. Blankets, water, crates. Triggered panic. Once inside, Titan changed. Sniffed, stalked, bristled. Ethan gave him space. "Take your time," he said, voice soft. "Ain't rushing." That night, Titan stayed muzzled. Huddled in the corner, Ethan left food nearby. Slept on the couch, door open, listening. Around 2 a.m., a crash. Glass Titan stood in the kitchen, frozen among shards, waiting to be hit. "It's just glass," Ethan murmured. "Doesn't matter." He cleaned slowly. Titan never took his eyes off him. The growl never fully stopped. That night, neither slept. Next morning brought the first disaster. Ethan removed the muzzle for feeding, then dropped a pan. Titan flipped, bared teeth, lunged clamped onto Ethan's arm before he could blink. Pain. Exploded. Blood followed. But Ethan didn't yell, didn't pull. "It's okay," he grunted. "I'm not fighting you." Titan held, ... then let go. Confused, Ethan backed away. Calm, washed the wound for punctures, deep but clean. He was supposed to report it. Bites meant return. Return meant death. Ethan looked at the towel around his bleeding arm, then at the dog trembling under the table. "Our secret," he said. Over the next days, Titan stayed edgy, growled at shadows. But he ate, watched, slept barely. Progress. On day 4, Ethan was changing the bandage when the phone rang. "How's our little monster?" Mary asked. Ethan glanced across the room. Titan stared back, head tilted. "We're figuring it out." They balanced each other in a strange way, he said slowly. "Nothing to report today." The lie came out smooth, like he'd practiced. "Well, that's news," Mary replied clearly. Caught off guard, most folks would have quit by now. The comment landed hard. Ethan blinked. "Never said I was a handler." "A quiet beat, aren't you, though? Military, right? You've got that vibe." He didn't answer. "Didn't need 2 figures," Mary said softly. "That explains a few things. You should have said something, Mr. Mallister. Would it have changed anything? Maybe saved you some paperwork," she chuckled. "But around here, a man's business is his own." When the call ended, Ethan dropped to the floor, still keeping the space Titan seemed to need. "Guess we're both carrying stuff," he muttered to the dog. Titan didn't growl this time, not once, the second week tested. Ethan in new ways. Whispers had drifted through Clearwater Mallister. Suddenly, neighbors who used to ignore him had errands that brought them too close. "Heard you got yourself a challenge," said Bill Simmons one morning, leaning over the fence while Ethan grabbed the mail. Mary Jenkins finally lost it. Ethan kept it short. "He's adjusting, quiet, like me." "Well," Bill said, undeterred, "my grandkids come Sundays. If that dog breaks free, he let the threat hang there." "He won't," Ethan replied. Heading inside, Titan had carved out a rhythm retreating to the spare room, but occasionally venturing near Ethan, he'd enter the living room if Ethan sat. The kitchen, if food was involved, never close, never careless, always alert. The growling had eased some. Now it was just that stare sharp and tracking, like Ethan remembered from combat. Day 9. Titan ate with Ethan in the room. Day 12, he napped an hour on the rug, Ethan reading nearby tiny milestones. For Ethan, they felt massive. The bite wound was scabbing. It would scar another to add to the map on his body. He'd told Dr. Mitchell. It came from a busted fence. She didn't believe him. Didn't say it, but her eyes gave her away. Still, she cleaned it, dressed it. "Technically, I should report this," she said. "I know," Ethan replied, "but I won't," she said quietly. "Just take care of yourself, not all damage." Shows her words echoed during the drive back. Sarah Mitchell never looked at him like he was broken. Never pried about the war. Never asked about his wife. Maybe because her job made her fluent in pain, she didn't need the story. On day 15, it all nearly unraveled. They had a System 7 a.m. breakfast, slow loop around the fence midday, obedience drills. Dinner at 6. Structure helped Titan. Knowing what came next calmed the wild in him that afternoon. Ethan tried teaching sit with a hand cue, but the moment he raised his arm over Titan's head, it happened. The dog snapped hackles. Up, teeth bared, eyes gone feral. Ethan realized his mistake too late. He froze. "Easy, boy, my bad." But Titan wasn't hearing anything. He lunged, clamping down on Ethan's already injured arm. This bite had intent. Fear-driven, yes, but savage. Ethan gritted his teeth. "Didn't fight it? I'm not him," he said, voice tight with pain. "I'm not the one who hurt you." Blood puddled under them. Titan held firm, caught in some memory, too deep for words. They stayed like that for nearly a minute, man and dog. Locked in a moment, neither wanted, but both knew. And then, something flickered. Not trust. Not yet, but a pause, a breath. Titan released. Stepped back, still growling, but less sure now. Ethan didn't move. When he did, it was slow. "We'll try again tomorrow," he whispered, wrapping his arm. A different tactic. As he cleaned the wound that night, Ethan faced something he'd avoided. He couldn't do this alone. Not this, he called Sarah. "It's not just the bruises," he said when she came by. "I need to know what sets him off, what sends him spiraling." She looked him over, eyes sharper than usual. "You mean the same things that wake you up screaming? That hit harder than any bite?" He didn't answer, just watched as she knelt near the spare room's entrance. Titan growled, low and tired. Maybe it's not just about him, Ethan said finally. No, she said. But he still deserves better. She kept her distance, studying him. These scars, she said, pointing toward Titan's back, look like dogfighting. He was probably bait. She moved her hand slightly. But these burn marks, perfect circles. Symmetrical wounds on the neck, that's training, not random. Someone was shaping him, breaking him, to make him a weapon, Ethan asked. Exactly. They spent hours dissecting Titan's behavior, identifying red flags, building a framework for healing. Sarah had the clinical insight. Ethan had the instinct. By the end, they had a plan slow, careful, patient, maybe years of work ahead. Most people would have given him back after the first bite, she said at the door. Almost all after the second. Ethan looked at his wrapped arm. I'm not most. Clearly, she hesitated. The shelter board meets next week. Word spreading. Frank Coleman's stirring things up. Says, you're a liability. Ethan's jaw clenched. We're not a risk, he said. We keep to ourselves, I know, Sarah replied. But in this town, perception matters. Then, something changed. While cleaning the spare room Titans, now Ethan found a worn tennis ball under the bed. On impulse, he rolled it across the floor. Titan froze, ears up, eyes sharp, and then, in a flash, he pounce-grabbed the ball and retreated, not to chew it, not to destroy it, he cradled it. Ethan didn't move, barely breathed. This wasn't rage, this was memory. Something soft, buried deep. You want to play? Ethan whispered. Amazed, Titan didn't drop the ball, but his whole frame had shifted. A dog, not a weapon. Each day after, Ethan would roll, the ball gently not throw, never over Titan's head. No sudden moves. Titan brought it back. A few feet away, then closer. By week's end, he was dropping it at Ethan's side. Tail low but wagging dot play became their secret language, a way to sidestep trauma. Ethan realized verbal commands sparked fear, but hand signals. Those worked. They built a new system, quiet, respectful, watchful. Then, on day 23, it all almost fell apart again. Ted Parker, the mailman, showed up. Titan and Ethan were outside. Mid-training. Ted had never been a problem. He left the mail and left, but this time, he came too close. Titan snapped, sprinted to the fence, barking like hell itself. Ted stumbled, cursed, dropped his bag. Control your damn dog, he shouted. Ethan called Titan back. Miracle he obeyed, but kept growling. Eyes fixed on Ted, could have ended there. Just a scare. But Ted had a sister on the council, and a grudge. By nightfall, Deputy Frank Coleman was at Ethan's door. Got a complaint, he said, eyes scanning the house behind Ethan. Mailman says your dog went after him, behind a fence. Never touched him, Ethan replied. Still a violation, Frank said. You signed a no-incident clause. You remember that, right? Ethan's pulse rose, a familiar heat in his skull. He was doing his job. Guarding home, not. With his background, Frank snapped. Look, I'm trying to be fair, but folks are spooked. 30 signatures on a petition already. Ethan blinked. There aren't 30 houses within a mile. Frank looked sheepish. Word spreads. Council meets Monday. After he left, Ethan sat on the porch. Titan hovered at the doorway. The whole thing was ridiculous. But fear doesn't need facts, it feeds on shadows. The weekend crawled by. Cars slowed outside. Some snapped photos. Titan lying calmly in the yard. Someone posted it. Dangerous dog loose in our town? By Monday, the town hall was packed. Ethan sat in the back, alone. Titan stayed home. Mary Jenkins gave a polite nod. Sarah Mitchell smiled faintly from up front, but most eyes cold, suspicious. Mayor Thompson round, balding, always sweating, banged his gavel. We're here to discuss the threat at 1420 Canyon Road. Ethan stayed quiet as person after person spoke. Ted's story grew more dramatic by the minute. Bill worried about his grandkids. Others ranted about safety, values, property. Finally, it was Ethan's turn. He stood, hands clenched, but voice calm. Wrong about Titan, he said. He's not born dangerous. He was made that way by people. He laid it out, the journey, the bites, the progress. Some looked moved, Most didn't. Your dog's got a record, the mayor interrupted. 3 failed owners. None of them understood him, Ethan said. And you do, Frank asked. Before Ethan could answer, Sarah stood. Yes, she said. I've seen them together. I've seen the plan. It's working, Ted scoffed. So we wait until that beast mauls someone. The room heated up. Eventually, the mayor held up a hand. We'll deliberate. In the meantime, the dog stays secured. No exceptions. Public outings were still restricted unless Titan was leashed, and Ethan had 30 days to show documented improvement from a certified professional lore, else the dangerous animal ordinance would be enforced. It was better than he'd feared, but it still felt like a partial loss. As the meeting broke up, Ethan was surprised to find himself quietly surrounded by a few unexpected supporters. Mary Jenkins, Sarah Mitchell, and an elderly woman he didn't recognize. Is Cooper. Don't pay them no mind, Agnes said, gently patting his arm with a hand knotted by arthritis. People get scared of what they don't understand. My Harold was the same after numjumpier than a cat in a thunderstorm. Took years. Before he could sleep through the night, Ethan blinked, caught off guard by both the comparison and the compassion. 30 days ain't much, Sarah said as they walked to their cars, but I'll help track his progress. We can do this, Ethan said, a little more hopeful. Mary nodded. I'll talk to a few of the board members, one-on-one. They usually trust me when it comes to animals, even if they're panicking right now. On the drive home, something settled in Ethan's chest, a feeling he hadn't had in years. A strange mix of focus, purpose, connection. For the first time since Sarah died, people saw him as something other than the grieving widower who kept to himself. It was awkward, but not entirely unwelcome. Titan greeted him at the doorknot, with tail wags and bouncing paws, but with sharp-eyed awareness, calm and controlled. A small step forward, Ethan thought, not flashy, but real. We've got a deadline, he told the German shepherd, who tilted his head at the sound of his voice. 30 days to prove they're wrong about you. That evening, as Ethan reviewed his scribbled training notes, a memory from his army days bubbled up. A stubborn Belgian Malinois once thought to be untrainable till someone realized the dog had only ever been given commands in German. On a hunch, Ethan cracked open his laptop and looked up some basic German obedience cues. The next morning, with Titan keeping a cautious eye from across the yard, Ethan tried something simple. Sits, he said firmly, while giving the hand signal for sit. What happened next made Ethan's heart skip. Titan's entire posture shifted, alert, engaged. Not hostile, but sharp, like a switch had flipped. He sat without hesitation. Eyes widened. Platz, he said, trying the command for down. Titan obeyed instantly, lying down with eyes locked on Ethan, waiting. I'll be damned, Ethan whispered. The discovery that Titan responded to German changed everything. Higher, Ethan would call, and Titan would come running with purpose. Bleib, and the dog would stay frozen until released. The same. English commands had stirred anxiety and resistance now. In German, they drew calm and precise action. It's like he's got 2 sides, Ethan explained to Sarah during one of her weekly visits. English turns him into that scared, angry dog. German brings out something else, something trained. Sarah nodded thoughtfully. That tells us a lot. Whoever trained him in German knew what they were doing. Probably military or police. Then something went wrong. She didn't finish the sentence. And someone used that training against him, Ethan concluded, jaw tightening. Turned a working dog into a weapon. The theory made his stomach churn. With that understanding, Ethan changed their entire approach. German became the language of work and structure. English was only for comfort and praise. That separation seemed to unlock something deep in Titan's brain, allowing him to function without panic. Progress took off. By the 3rd week, Titan could perform over a dozen commands consistently, remained composed around low-level distractions, and perhaps most astonishingly allowed Ethan to briefly touch him during sessions. The contact was always initiated by command and withdrawn at the first sign of tension. But it was a breakthrough Ethan hadn't imagined possible. He's a solid level 2, Sarah reported, referring to the scale she'd developed to document progress, which is incredible. He was a 0 when you got him. Ethan nodded, his expression guarded. Still a long climb to level 5, and the council wants a miracle. Sarah packed her tools, giving Ethan and Titan a long look. "It's not just the dog who's changing, you know," she said gently. "You are too." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "How you figure?" "You talk more," she smiled. "You make eye contact. You let people in. 3 months ago, would you have let me or Mary stop by like this?" Ethan hadn't thought of it that way. He'd been so focused on Titan's healing that he hadn't noticed his own. Weekly chats with Sarah, Mary's surprise visits, even Agnes dropping off homemade dog treats with a wink. "I guess not," he admitted. Sarah's tone turned serious. "The council meets Monday. We've got proof of progress. But it might not be enough." Ethan glanced toward the fence line where Titan patrolled. "We'll be ready." That weekend flew by in a blur. Ethan drilled their demo routine until both he and Titan could do it in their sleep. Sarah stopped by Sunday morning with a camera. To document, Titan nailed every move. Sit, stay, come even, a 5-minute hold under distraction. "Perfect," Sarah said, lowering the lens. "If they still think he's dangerous, they don't want to see the truth." That evening, Ethan sat on his porch, while Titan rested nearby closer than ever before. The Arizona sky glowed with gold and blood-red streaks. "Whatever happens tomorrow," Ethan whispered, "you've already done more than anyone expected." Titan's ears perked at his voice, amber eyes soft in the fading light. It was their most peaceful moment yet until, at 9:47 p.m., everything shattered. Ethan was in the living room, reading, Titan drowsing by the door. Then glass broke. A sharp, violent sound. Titan snapped awake, growling low. Before Ethan could rise, another crash erupted from the kitchen. Then the stink of gasoline hit him like a slap. Fire, he realized, running. "Blibe," he barked. Titan froze, tense, but still. The kitchen window was smashed, and a crude Molotov cocktail sizzled on the linoleum. Ethan grabbed the extinguisher and killed the flames before they could spread. It was clumsy, not a pro job, but still a threat. Someone had come for them, and then gravel crunched outside, not retreating, approaching. The attacker wasn't done. "Higher," Ethan called, voice low. Titan snapped to his side, rigid with anticipation. Through the jagged hole in the window, Ethan saw a figure, tall, dark clothes, moving toward the back door. The man wasn't hiding his approach. Ethan grabbed his phone. No signal. He reached for the landline. Dead. Not an accident. His instincts surged to life, old training roaring back. He positioned himself by the door, Titan at his side. The handle turned, then jiggled. When it didn't give, a boot shattered it inward. A man stepped in ski mask, knife in one hand, flashlight in the other. "Should have kept out of this," he growled, voice young tinged with southern twang. "Breaking and entering's a felony," Ethan said coolly. "So's arson. Leave now, and maybe you walk away." The man laughed, harsh and hollow. "Give me what's mine, and I'll make it quick." "What's yours?" Ethan asked, though dread already crept in. The flashlight swept to Titan. "That dog cost me 50. Grand training and fights. Been tracking him since he ran off. Thought he was dead till I heard some do-gooder was rehabilitating him." He spat the word. "That was my best fighter." "You're wasting him." Ethan's stomach turned. This was no vandal. This was the one who broke Titan. "He's not your property," Ethan said, voice sharp, "and he's not going anywhere." The man shifted weight on his front foot. Ethan saw it coming. "Sit," he said calmly. Titan sat, locked in. The intruder froze, confused. "What are you doing?" "Proving a point," Ethan said. "That the dog you turned into a monster is more disciplined than you ever were." Rage twisted the man's face. With a scream, he lunged, knife flashing. Ethan dodged, slammed him into the fridge, the blade clattering to the floor. But the attacker fought like an animal, tackling Ethan. They crashed to the ground, struggling. A punch landed hard on Ethan's jaw. Then a gut blow knocked the wind from him. Through the blur, Ethan saw the man's hand close around the knife. Desperation flared. "Should have given me the dog," the man snarled, mask slipping, revealing a young, hate-filled face. "Now, I'll finish this." The knife pressed against Ethan's throat. Titan didn't move. He was still following orders. Their eyes locked. Ethan gave the only command that mattered. "Fast." Titan sprang like a bullet, a flash of teeth, a powerful body. But it wasn't a savage attack. It was a precision takedown. Titan clamped onto the intruder's forearm, dragged him off Ethan with exact force. No blood, no tear, just pure trained restraint. The man screamed, more in shock than pain. Oz. Ethan barked. Titan released instantly, backing up into perfect position. Guarding, focused, waiting. The man scrambled, clutching his arm. What the hell? That's not what he was trained to do. No, Ethan said, picking up the knife. That's what he was trained to do, B. For you ruined him. He grabbed the phone. The line buzzed. It was working now. Blibe, he said. Titan held position as Ethan called 911. 12 minutes later, Deputy Frank Coleman walked into a kitchen full of smoke, blood, and busted glass. Titan stood alert over the intruder, who was handcuffed and cursing. What in holy hell happened here? Frank asked. Home invasion, Ethan answered calmly. This guy says Titan belongs to him. The man shouted, I got papers. That dog's mine. Frank looked between the thug and Titan, who stood like a statue. This the dog the council's scared of. Ethan nodded. Same one. As the deputies hauled the man off, Frank lingered. You know we've still got that meeting tomorrow. Ethan gave a nod. Frank glanced at Titan, then back at Ethan. I think you'll be ready. Finally relaxed his guard and stepped closer. To Ethan, his posture easing but his eyes still sharp. He gave a low whistle, shaking his head in disbelief. Dog could have ripped that guy to pieces, Frank muttered. Had every reason to. But instead, he held the line. For the first time since they'd met, Ethan saw something shift in the deputy's gaze and acknowledgement, maybe even respect. See you at the meeting, Frank said, turning to leave. Both of you. Word spread like wildfire through Clearwater. By the time the sun crested the horizon, the story had already taken on a life of its own. What began as a whisper about a late-night break-in evolved into a near-mythical tale. At its heart, Ethan Mallister's so-called dangerous dog had subdued a violent man without spilling a drop of blood. But what people didn't know they couldn't was what came after Frank walked out the door. Alone in the dim light of his kitchen, Ethan finally let the weight of the night settle in. His limbs were heavy, his hands trembling as the adrenaline faded. Across the room, Titan didn't rest. He watched Ethan closely, not with suspicion, but with something almost protective. Good boy, Ethan whispered hoarsely, emotion, tugging at his voice. That's who you are. And for the first time ever, Titan closed the distance on his own. He pressed his head gently into Ethan's hand. No command, no leash, just a moment of quiet, tentative connection. The contact barely lasted a breath, but its meaning was undeniable. Trust, delicate and unfinished, was beginning to grow. The morning brought reality crashing back in. The broken window needed covering. The scorched linoleum had to be scrubbed, and both man and dog were running on empty. Ethan worked steadily, and Titan stayed near. No longer aloof, but following with quiet focus, Dr. Sarah Mitchell arrived just before noon. Having already heard 3 wildly different versions of the story from downtown, her breath caught as she saw Ethan's bruises and the wreckage around him. Are you okay? She asked, slipping into medical mode. I've had worse, Ethan said with a wince, his ribs flaring as he moved. Titan, not a mark on him. Sarah shook her head in astonishment. Word on Main Street is he took down an escaped convict like a pro, didn't even draw blood. Ethan smiled faintly. Small towns. Who was he really? Sarah asked, accepting the coffee Ethan handed her. No name yet, he said. Frank's people are still digging, but he claimed he used to own Titan, said he was trained for fighting. Her expression darkened. That fits. Good foundation. Corrupted for cruelty. It's disgusting, but it checks out. She glanced at Titan, who was quietly observing them from near the door. How did he handle it? Like a soldier, Ethan said with pride. One command, one move subdued him. Clean. No overkill. Released on cue. Sarah nodded, visibly impressed. After all he's been through. And his core instincts still held. That's incredible. They spent the next hour going over Titan's actions, Sarah documenting everything for her evaluation report. As she was getting ready to leave, she paused at the door. Meetings at 7. After last night, I'd say the outcome's leaning in your favor, but still, be ready for questions. She hesitated. Want me to drive? You're looking rough. He started to wave her off. Then, reconsidered? Yeah, that'd be good. Thank you. She smiled warmly and promised to return by 6:30. Ethan spent the afternoon preparing, reviewing the files Sarah had compiled, and rehearsing what little he planned to say. Titan sensed something was up. He didn't stray far. Every command executed with perfect discipline. At 6 p.m., as Ethan buttoned his cleanest shirt, his phone rang. It was Frank. "No small talk," Frank began. "Your intruder. Name's Michael Dawson, 34, Georgia native. 3 prior charges for animal cruelty. Texas has a live warrant for organized dogfighting." "Did he confirm anything about Titan?" Ethan asked. "Oh, he's singing," Frank said, a grim sort of satisfaction in his tone. "Says he can name names, claims there's a whole circuit trafficking fighting dogs across state lines. Called Titan by another name, Destroyer. Said he was one of their prized animals until he went soft and needed punishment." Ethan's jaw clenched. Punishment. What does that mean? Label that dog's only a threat to monsters. "Thank you," Ethan said quietly, genuinely moved. "Don't thank me yet," Frank warned. "Mayor Thompson's still squeamish, but you've got more supporters than you think." Instead, he stepped forward, gave her a sniff, then stepped back, not with fear, but recognition. "He remembers," Ethan explained as they settled into her car. "After the fight, he was limping. You checked him, gave him that treat." Sarah looked at him in the mirror. Animals remember kindness. But something had shifted. When Ethan walked in with Titan, the murmurs weren't fearful. They were curious, respectful. Mayor Thompson looked uncomfortable as he opened the meeting. "We are here to revisit the classification of the dog known as Titan, currently under the care of Mr. Ethan Mallister," he said, still hesitant to say ownership. What followed bore no resemblance to the hostility of the first meeting. Deputy Coleman read his report, voice dry but tinged with admiration. Sarah spoke next, presenting her findings and videos of Titan's progress. When Ethan was finally called up, he kept it short. "Titan's not dangerous," he said plainly. "He was broken by people, trained to be something he wasn't. But beneath all that, there's a good dog trying to come back." He let his eyes meet those who had once doubted. He just needed a chance. The council didn't take long. Unanimous vote, dangerous label, gone. In its place, a formal commendation for community. Safety. Overwritten legalese, sure, but the message was clear. Titan was no longer a threat. He was a hero. As the room emptied, people came up one by one. Even Bill Simmons, an early critic, approached. "Think I was wrong about your dog," he said sheepishly. "My wife says I owe you an apology, and she's usually right." "No hard feelings," Ethan replied. "You were trying to protect your family." Ted Parker was a no-show. Rumor was he'd asked to change his mail route. "Told you there was something special about that dog," she said, rewriting history with a smile. Ethan just nodded. Sarah eventually broke the silence. "So, what now?" Ethan glanced out the window, watching Titan shift in his sleep. "Now we heal." That night, under a wide Arizona sky, Ethan sat out on the porch alone until Titan joined him. No commands, no coaxing. The dog settled beside his chair, not touching, just close. And for the first time, Ethan didn't feel like he was forcing a bond. It was simply there. Still, the weight of what remained haunted him. Dawson was in custody, yes, but his network, still out there, dogs like Titan still suffering. The victory felt real, but incomplete later that night, when thunder cracked and lightning split the sky. Titan didn't flee. Instead, he hesitated at Ethan's bedroom door. Ethan stirred. Watching him? "It's okay," he whispered. "You're safe here." After a pause, Titan stepped inside. Lay beside the bed, not too close, but close enough. Outside, the storm raged. But inside, a man and his dog, both survivors, found peace in each other's presence. The days that followed were surprisingly calm, with Titan's name cleared. The whispers faded. Some neighbors even offered smiles. The petition disappeared from conversation, replaced by nods of approval. Ethan embraced the quiet. Every day brought progress, training, rest, evening patrols. Titan was still wary but healing. Then, a week after the attack, Deputy Coleman showed up again, unannounced. Titan didn't panic this time, just watched, quiet, steady. Now that's progress, Frank said. Dawson's giving us everything names, drop points, even a supplier. This thing's big, Ethan. Multi-state? Organized. They called him Destroyer. Said he wasn't. Like the others, most were pits. He was a working dog, stolen, military or police trained, taken, then twisted. Someone who trained him, right? Looks that way, Frank nodded. Dawson didn't know who. Said a supplier stole him, passed him off. It made Ethan sick. Titan hadn't just been abused, he'd been taken from someone who might have loved him. It deepened the tragedy. There's more, Frank added. The feds are in now. It's interstate, so it's their case. They want records photos, vet reports, behavior logs. Sarah's already started, but they'll want to interview you too. Build a case against the whole ring. Ethan looked at Titan, who met his gaze without fear. Will he have to be there? Just pictures, Frank said. The physical proof scars, injuries. Sarah can handle that part, but your voice, your story, that's what nails this thing. Shut, Ethan nodded slowly. If it helps end it yet, I'll do it. Cooperate. After Frank left, Ethan sat on the porch, staring out at the horizon, his thoughts swirling. The idea that Titan might have been stolen, that he'd once belonged, to someone who trained him, loved him, maybe even spent years searching and settled Ethan in a way he hadn't expected. It added a new layer of grief, one he hadn't accounted for. That evening, Sarah arrived with her camera, moving with the practiced calm of someone used to documenting trauma. She photographed every scar, every old fracture, capturing the silent testimony of Titan's past. The German Shepherd stayed still through it all, responding only to Ethan's quiet German commands. It's incredible, Sarah murmured, reviewing the images. His body's in phenomenal shape. Whoever had him before Dawson really cared for him. Ethan nodded grimly. Which means someone might still be out there. Sarah's expression shifted, the weight of that realization settling in. You think he was stolen? Ethan didn't answer outright, but his silence said enough. If Titan had been ripped away from someone who truly valued him, didn't that person deserve to know he was alive? Maybe the federal case will uncover something Sarah offered. If he was part of a canine unit, there could be records, microchips, registrations. Ethan's voice was tight. Dawson would have gotten rid of any chip. Sure, she agreed, but the paper trail might still lead somewhere. If they tracked the supplier, they might figure out where Titan came from. She packed up her equipment slowly. It's worth asking. 3 days later, a government SUV pulled up in Ethan's drive. A woman stepped out, mid-30s maybe, with a kind of calm authority that made Ethan instantly attentive. Mr. Mallister, she said, holding out a badge. Special Agent Cassandra Rivera. FBI, Organized Crime Task Force. Thank you for your cooperation. Ethan nodded, ushering her inside. For the next 2 hours, he detailed everything Titan's reactions, his triggers, the commands he responded to. Agent Rivera jotted careful notes, occasionally asking him to elaborate. We suspect he was part of a specialized canine unit, she explained, possibly military or federal. Dawson's supplier targeted dogs with high-level training, valuable on both sides of the law. Ethan leaned forward, his voice low. Can you trace him? Agent Rivera didn't flinch. We're trying. If Titan Destroyer, according to Dawson, was reported missing by a legit agency, there might be records. But this ring was active for years across multiple states. Dogs like him could have disappeared without a trace. But you'll try, Ethan pressed. Yes, she said, her voice firm. But if we do find his original handler, there may be questions about custody. Ethan felt the air leave his chest, Rivera noticed. For what it's worth, she added gently, what you did for him, it matters. Most people would have given up. You didn't. That night, Ethan couldn't shake the unease. Titan sensed it, trailing him from room to room like a shadow. The idea of losing the dog who had almost died for him was a jagged thought. But the idea of someone else, someone who had once loved Titan serving closure, was just as strong. Later that evening, as the local news reported on the massive dogfighting bust, Ethan's phone rang. The caller ID showed a Virginia number. Mr. Mallister, a woman said. This is Diane Morris from Canine Interest Magazine. We cover stories on working dogs and their rehabilitation. We'd love to feature you and Titan. Ethan's gut reaction was to say no. He valued privacy, and Titan's recovery wasn't some headline to him, it was personal. "How'd you get my number?" he asked. "Dr. Sarah Mitchell gave it to us," the woman replied. She thought Titan's story could help change public perceptions, especially about dogs labeled dangerous. Ethan hesitated, glancing at Titan curled nearby. What would it involve? An interview? Some photos? We'd focus on the bond between you and Titan, the work you've done, the hope his story represents. It still felt invasive, but Ethan paused. If sharing Titan's journey could help others like him. "Let me think about it," he said. But before he could make a decision, the situation escalated. The evening news aired a special report about the bust. To Ethan's shock, they included footage of Titan taken at the town council meeting describing him as a former fighting dog turned therapy companion. That wasn't technically true, but it was. Close, Deputy Coleman spoke warmly about Titan's transformation, crediting Ethan's military background for the dog's turnaround. As the segment ended, the anchor added something unexpected. Award-winning documentarian Alexis Carter has expressed interest in filming Titan's story. Ethan stared at the TV, stunned. No one had told him about a documentary. The thought of their private journey becoming public domain was jarring. Titan, as if sensing his discomfort, walked over and rested his head on Ethan's knee, something he never would have done weeks earlier. Ethan ran his hand over the dog's head, unsettled. The past he had kept quiet was becoming a public story. And maybe that was okay. Maybe Titan's survival meant something bigger than their porch and their routines. Maybe the story was never just his. A year later, Ethan sipped coffee on the porch, watching Titan patrol the yard with steady grace. The dog was calm now, self-assured, scanning the perimeter like it was a job he took seriously. Everything had changed. The fence was rebuilt. The garden behind the house thrived. The kitchen bore no traces of the midnight attack. Even Ethan had changed. "Looking good, buddy," he called. Titan turned, ears pricked, and trotted over, leaning against Ethan's leg with familiar weight. It wasn't dependency, was trust, mutual, earned. The documentary, redeemed. Titan's journey had been more powerful than Ethan expected. Carter had honored her word, no sensationalism, just truth. Titan's truth. The film had sparked real change, pushing lawmakers to reconsider animal cruelty laws and rehabilitation standards. Sarah Mitchell helped them get certified as a therapy team. Twice a week, they visited the Phoenix VA hospital, offering comfort to veterans. Ethan didn't talk much, but Titan didn't need words to connect. "Time to go," Ethan said, checking his watch. Titan followed, steady and ready. The house now had photos Titan at the July parade in his vest, with Dr. Mitchell proof of a journey no one had believed possible. The dogfighting ring had been dismantled. Dawson was behind bars. 27 people charged across 6 states, hundreds of dogs freed, and 3 months ago, everything changed again. Agent Rivera had called. "We found a match," she said, her voice tight with excitement. Titan had a real name, Barron. He'd belonged to Officer James Lawson, a dual-purpose K-9 from the San Diego PD, stolen during a home break-in 4 years ago. Ethan had felt the air shift confirmation. Titan hadn't been born into violence. He'd been loved, trained, taken. Rivera told Ethan Lawson wanted to meet. The park was neutral ground. Ethan had spent the week before that meeting a mess of nerves. What if Titan remembered? What if he didn't? Would Lawson want him back? Would Ethan give him up? Lawson had arrived younger than Ethan expected. Honest eyes, respectful posture. "Barron," he called softly. Titan tilted his head, subtle but clear, he remembered. They talked for hours about training, patrol, the theft, the long hunt. Ethan shared the rehab process. Lawson had listened, eyes glistening. "He was my first K-9, he said. "We were partners. I searched for months, never stopped wondering." The question neither had voiced now hovered in the air. Who should Titan go home with? Ethan had prepared himself to let go. If Lawson asked, he wouldn't fight it. Titan deserved that choice.